My brother convinced everyone I was dead for 2 years to steal my inheritance, but then I showed up at mom's wedding and the look on his face when she said, "Wait, is that really you?" He never expected what happened next. I, 31M, have been dealing with something that sounds so crazy, I still can't believe it happened to me. 2 years ago, my brother Tom, 34M, convinced our entire family that I had died in a hiking accident while I was working abroad in New Zealand. The truth? I was very much alive, just completely cut off from everyone due to his elaborate scheme. It all started when I took a job opportunity in New Zealand. The position was in wildlife conservation, my dream career, but it meant being in some pretty remote areas with limited communication. Before I left, I gave Tom power of attorney to handle some property matters for me back home, since I trusted him completely. He was my big brother, my best friend, or so I thought. What I didn't know was that our grandfather had left a substantial inheritance that would only be distributed once both my brother and I turned 30. Tom knew about this, but I didn't. He had found out about it while going through some old documents with our family lawyer, and instead of telling me, he saw an opportunity. When I went to New Zealand, I was working in areas with very limited internet and phone service. I would go weeks without being able to contact anyone. Tom used this to his advantage. He began telling our family that I was becoming increasingly reckless with my hiking expeditions. He showed them edited emails where I supposedly talked about taking dangerous solo trips. Then, about 3 months into my stay, he reported me missing. He had crafted this whole story about how I had gone on a solo hiking trip and never returned. He even managed to fake enough evidence to have me legally declared dead after the searches found nothing. All while I was happily working with endangered birds in remote areas, completely unaware that back home, my family was mourning me. The only reason I found out about any of this was because my laptop finally died, and I had to go into the nearest city to get a new one. That's when I was finally able to properly check my email and social media. Imagine my shock when I logged into Facebook and saw memorial posts about me. There were hundreds of messages mourning my death, photos of my funeral, and even a charity foundation started in my name by Tom to honor my memory. But the thing that really made my blood boil? I discovered that our mom had gotten engaged, and her wedding was in 2 weeks. The thought of my brother attending that wedding, pretending to grieve for me while living off my inheritance. I couldn't let that happen. I managed to book a flight home immediately. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. How do you even start that conversation? "Hey, just FYI, I'm not dead?" I decided the best way to handle this was to simply show up at the wedding. Looking back, maybe it wasn't the most tactful plan, but I wasn't exactly thinking straight after learning my own brother had erased me from existence. I'm still dealing with the fallout from what happened at that wedding, and my brother's reaction when he saw me walk in. Well, that's a whole other story that I'll share in the update. But right now, I need advice on how to handle this legally. Tom spent 2 years living off my inheritance money, and the things he's done with it. I'm still discovering new layers to his deception every day. Update 1. Thank you all for the overwhelming support. The wedding confrontation was even more intense than I expected, and I'm still processing everything that happened. I arrived at the church just as the ceremony was starting. I stood at the back, watching my brother give a speech about family and loss, rich coming from someone who had legally killed me off. Then came the moment when the priest asked if anyone had any objections. I know it's cliché, but I couldn't resist. I walked down the aisle and simply said, "Yeah, I have an objection. I'm not dead." The chaos that erupted was unreal. My mom fainted right there at the altar. Her fiancé, now husband, thought he was seeing a ghost. My brother. I've never seen someone's face lose color so fast. He started backing away, knocking over a flower arrangement, stammering about how this was impossible. But the most heartbreaking reaction was from my 8-year-old niece. She ran straight to me, crying and screaming, "Uncle Jamie." Not my real name. Tom had been telling her stories about her angel uncle watching over her, using my supposed death to manipulate even his own daughter. Security tried to remove me, thinking I was some sort of prankster, until my mom came to and started screaming that it was really me. She ran to me, touched my face, and completely broke down. The next hour was a blur of tears, hugs, and confusion. The wedding was temporarily halted while everyone tried to process what was happening. Tom tried to slip away during the chaos, but my mom's new husband, who's actually a police detective, had someone quietly block all the exits. That's when Tom had the audacity to try spinning a new lie, claiming he had recently discovered I was alive but wanted to surprise everyone at the wedding. Nobody bought it, especially after I showed everyone my continuous employment records from New Zealand. The wedding eventually continued, at my insistence. I wasn't going to let Tom ruin another family event. But during the reception, things got even crazier. Tom's wife pulled me aside and revealed that she had discovered some disturbing things in their home office. Not only had Tom been spending my inheritance, but he'd also taken out several loans in my name after having me declared dead. He bought a vacation house, 3 luxury cars, and even started a business, all using my death benefits and stolen identity. The next morning, we met with the family lawyer. That's when we discovered the full extent of Tom's scheme. The inheritance from our grandfather wasn't just money, it included controlling interest in the family company, which would have been split between us. By having me declared dead, Tom gained complete control. He spent the past 2 years systematically stripping the company's assets and moving them into accounts under his name. But here's the twist that no one saw coming. We found evidence that Tom had started planning this even before I left for New Zealand. He had been secretly working with a hacker to isolate my communication months before I left. Part 2. All those times my emails weren't going through? Those weeks when I couldn't seem to get a good phone connection? It wasn't just bad service in New Zealand, he had been actively blocking my ability to contact anyone back home. Mom is devastated. She keeps apologizing for believing him, but I don't blame her. Tom had orchestrated everything perfectly, he even hired actors to pose as New Zealand police officers to confirm my death to the family. The level of planning he put into this is terrifying. The police are now involved, and Tom is under house arrest. His wife has filed for divorce and is cooperating with investigators. She showed them hidden cameras he had installed around my old apartment building to make sure I hadn't returned without his knowledge. I'm staying with Mom and her new husband while we sort everything out legally. The amount of paperwork involved in coming back from the dead is staggering. But the hardest part? Watching my niece try to understand why her father did this. She asked me yesterday if this meant I wasn't her guardian angel anymore. How do you explain something like this to a child? Update 2. The past week has been absolute chaos. The investigation into Tom's scheme has uncovered things that are so twisted, even the detectives are shocked. But first, I want to thank everyone for their advice about my niece. The child therapist you recommended has been incredibly helpful. Let's start with the biggest revelation. Tom had an accomplice, our family's accountant of 20 years. The police found emails between them dating back 3 years before I left for New Zealand. They had been planning this whole thing long before I even got the job offer. In fact, the detective believes Tom might have arranged for me to get that specific job through some connections, knowing it would take me to remote areas. The accountant broke down during questioning and confessed everything. Turns out, the inheritance wasn't just the company shares and money we knew about. Our grandfather had set up a series of offshore investments that would mature when both grandsons turned 30, worth nearly $50 million. Tom had known about this for years but kept it hidden from everyone, even our parents. But here's where it gets even more twisted. Remember those actors Tom hired to pose as New Zealand police? They weren't actors at all, they were real corrupt officers he'd bribed. They're now under investigation too, and the whole thing has turned into an international case. Tom's wife, soon-to-be ex, has been absolutely crucial in bringing everything to light. She found a hidden safe in their house containing multiple fake passports and over $2 million in cash. She thinks Tom was planning to disappear himself once he'd finished draining all the assets. The most heartbreaking part? He'd only gotten passports for himself and our niece, he was planning to abandon his wife too. The family company is in shambles. Tom had been systematically selling off assets at below market rates to shell companies he'd created, then funneling the money through various offshore accounts. The forensic accountants say it could take years to trace everything. Several longtime employees have lost their jobs because of his schemes. Mom is not handling any of this well. She had to be hospitalized briefly for anxiety after discovering that Tom had been gaslighting her for years about her own memory. Apparently, whenever she'd mention wanting to contact me in New Zealand, he'd convince her she was having grief-induced delusions. He even got her to see a therapist who turned out to be another accomplice, a friend of the corrupt accountant who was feeding her antipsychotic medications under the guise of grief counseling. The police have now frozen all of Tom's assets, but we've only recovered about 30% of what he stole. His wife found evidence that he has millions stashed in cryptocurrency, but he's refusing to provide the wallet keys. He's facing multiple federal charges, and the prosecutor says he's looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. Yesterday, I finally got to meet with him face to face at the jail. I needed to know why go to such extreme lengths to destroy his own brother? His answer chilled me to the bone. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "Because you were always the favorite. Grandfather told me on his deathbed that he wished you'd been the firstborn. I decided to make his worst fear come true, having you out of the picture completely." The level of resentment he'd been harboring all these years, while pretending to be my best friend. It's devastating. All those childhood memories are now tainted. Was any of it real? Did he ever actually care about me at all? Update 3. I wasn't planning to update so soon, but the events of the past 48 hours have left me reeling. Everything has come crashing down in ways none of us expected. First, the trial isn't happening. Tom tried to make a deal with prosecutors, offering to reveal where all the money was hidden in exchange for a lighter sentence. But during the negotiation meeting, he somehow managed to slip away from his lawyers and escape custody. The U.S. Marshals are now leading a manhunt, but here's the terrifying part: they found detailed notes in his cell about planning to kidnap his daughter and flee the country. We immediately moved my sister-in-law and niece to a safe house. That's when things took an even darker turn. While packing some of my niece's things, my sister-in-law found a hidden tablet in Tom's old office. On it was a video diary he'd been keeping for years, documenting every step of his plan. The things he revealed. I'm still sick to my stomach. Apparently, this wasn't his first attempt to get rid of me. He'd been sabotaging my life for years, interfering with my college applications, ruining job opportunities, even breaking up my engagement 3 years ago by sending fake evidence of cheating to my fiancée. Every major setback in my life had been carefully orchestrated by my own brother. But the worst revelation came at the end of the video diary. The last entry was dated just 2 days before his escape. He looked straight into the camera and said, "If you're watching this, Jamie, it means you've won this round. But ask yourself, did grandfather really die of natural causes? Who do you think suggested he try that new heart medication?" The police are now reopening our grandfather's death investigation. Part 3. The medication Tom mentioned was apparently sourced from one of the same corrupt doctors involved in Mom's fake grief counseling. The detective says they've found a pattern of suspicious deaths connected to this doctor over the past decade. The family company's board of directors held an emergency meeting yesterday. They voted to temporarily hand control over to me while we sort out the legal mess. The forensic accountants have traced most of the missing money to accounts in the Cayman Islands, but recovering it will be complicated. At least we've managed to save the jobs of most employees. My niece's therapist has been amazing through all this. Yesterday, during their session, she finally asked the question we'd been dreading: did Daddy ever really love me? How do you answer that? The therapist helped us explain things in age-appropriate ways, but watching a child process this kind of betrayal is heartbreaking. Mom is doing better now that she's off the fake medications. Her new husband has been incredibly supportive, using his police connections to fast-track everything. She started therapy with a legitimate counselor, and yesterday she did something that surprised us all. She legally changed her last name to her new husband's, saying she couldn't bear to share a name with Tom anymore. The most surreal part? During all this chaos, I got a message from my ex-fiancée. She'd seen the news about Tom and realized she'd been manipulated too. We met for coffee yesterday, and after clearing up years of misunderstandings. Well, that's a story for another update. But right now, we're all on high alert. Tom is still out there somewhere, and he's proven there's no limit to what he's willing to do. The U.S. Marshals have assigned a protective detail to our family. They think he might try to access his cryptocurrency wallets, which could help them track him down. Final update: it's been 3 months since my last update, and I can finally share how everything ended. Brace yourselves, because the final chapter of this story is just as unbelievable as the rest. Tom's downfall came from the most unexpected source: his cryptocurrency obsession. After 2 weeks on the run, he couldn't resist trying to access one of his digital wallets. The feds had been monitoring all crypto transactions matching certain patterns, and they caught him at a library in Mexico, just hours away from boarding a yacht he'd bought with stolen money. But here's the twist that no one saw coming. When they arrested him, he was with our family's former accountant, who turned out to be his biological father. Yes, you read that right. Through DNA tests that were part of the investigation, we discovered that our mother had had a brief relationship with him before marrying our dad. Tom had known this for years. It was the real reason he had so much hatred toward me. I was our father's only biological child. The evidence they found on Tom's laptop in Mexico was damning. He had detailed files documenting every crime, including a confession to tampering with our grandfather's medication. The prosecutors aren't seeking a deal anymore. With the multiple charges of fraud, identity theft, kidnapping attempt, and now murder, he's facing life in prison. His sentencing is next week. The family company has made an incredible recovery. Remember those below-market deals Tom made? We managed to prove fraud and reverse most of them. The business is now more profitable than ever, and we've even expanded, hiring back everyone who lost their jobs plus creating new positions. My niece is thriving in therapy. She started a blog, with her mom's help, for kids dealing with family trauma, and it's actually helping a lot of children cope with similar situations. She told me yesterday that she wants to be a therapist when she grows up, to help other kids whose daddies made bad choices. Mom has completely transformed. After the truth about Tom's parentage came out, she finally let go of her guilt about failing as a mother. She and her new husband have started a support group for families of white-collar crime victims. She's even writing a book about her experience, with proceeds going to fraud prevention charities. Remember that coffee with my ex-fiancée I mentioned? Well, we're getting married next spring. After clearing up all of Tom's lies, we realized we never stopped loving each other. She's been amazing with my niece, who's thrilled to be our flower girl. My soon-to-be wife is also pregnant. We just found out it's twins, which feels like life coming full circle somehow. The forensic accountants finally cracked all of Tom's crypto wallets. The amount recovered was staggering, over $60 million in total. After returning the stolen funds, there was still our grandfather's original inheritance to deal with. I decided to set up a trust for my niece's future and donate the rest to establish a foundation that helps victims of financial fraud rebuild their lives. Last week, I visited Tom in prison. He'd been begging to see me through his lawyers. Part of me didn't want to go, but I needed closure. He looked so different, defeated, older. He tried to justify everything again, but this time, I just felt pity. I told him I forgave him, not for his sake, but for mine. The look on his face when I walked away. I think that was the first time he realized what he'd truly lost. My sister-in-law has found happiness too. She's dating one of the federal agents who helped crack the case. My niece adores him, and he's been incredible at helping her process everything. They're taking things slow, but it's beautiful seeing them heal together. The corrupt doctor who helped with our grandfather's murder has turned state's evidence. His testimony has led to the discovery of 4 other suspicious deaths, and more indictments are coming. Our grandfather will finally get justice, along with the other victims. Life is different now, but better. Mom says our family is like a broken bone that healed stronger at the fracture points. Yesterday, at a family dinner, the kind we have every Sunday now, I watched my niece laughing with my fiancée, Mom and her husband sharing knowing smiles, and my sister-in-law finally looking peaceful. I realized that sometimes the worst betrayals lead us to our best lives. To everyone who followed this crazy journey, thank you. Your support helped more than you know. And to anyone dealing with family betrayal, there's hope. Sometimes losing the family you thought you had leads you to the family you were meant to have all along.
Asterisk after listening to today's story, Perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind, or maybe it has brought back some old memories. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories, and they connect all of us. Everyone has their own unique journey in life, and we all try to understand the world in our own way. These kinds of moments remind us that we are all human, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, and always learning something new. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it with your friends. Your thoughts and feedback are always valuable to us, as they motivate us to create even better content. Every story has its own unique angle, and our goal is to understand everyone's perspective and make our content diverse and relatable. Stories like these help us realize that life's journey is different for everyone, and by hearing other stories, we learn something new. You can also share your own stories with us. Your experiences are valuable to us as well, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave your feedback. We aim to create content that brightens your mind and gives you new ideas every time. If you've already seen this video before, your feedback is still important. With every piece of feedback, we can improve our content and bring a new perspective to our viewers. Today, what we saw was just a small part of the many stories shared on Reddit and across the world. It's a reminder of how we all try to understand life by sharing our experiences with each other. This video was only an example of how we try to connect with others through storytelling, learning about different sides of life. We hope to continue sharing such stories that help us all learn and grow together. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon. If you haven't already, please like and follow for more amazing content. Your support keeps us going, and we will strive to bring you more thought-provoking and heartwarming stories. Until next time, take care and stay curious. **.